So, a few weeks ago, I made a project for a game jam called The Mercy Killing of Partheus. This was for the SRPG Studio One for All Game Jam 2024 edition. We have a game jam roughly annually in the SRPG Studio community, and we had one specifically also called a One for All Jam back in 2022, so it seems like this is turning into a series, so that's pretty sick. I think the only year we've missed since the engine came out in 2018, and we had our first jam on the first anniversary in 2019. I think 2021 was the only year we've missed game jam. So that year was a bummer, but besides that, things have been cool. This is a jam in the SRPG Studio community, but even though it even has SRPG Studio in the name of the jam, it's not only just SRPG Studio submissions that were allowed. Most of them were, because, this is mostly hosted in SRPG Studio circles, or mostly advertised, I guess, if that applies. But we had a Lex Talionis entry and an FE8 entry this time. Those were both pretty fun. I especially like the Lex Talionis one. If you've got like 5 to 10 minutes, I recommend looking up Shattered Chessboards on itch.io. It's really interesting. Actually, I'll probably just link the whole jam in the description with all 6 of the entries we got this time. Anyway, I figured I'd do like a retro of this jam and my entry to the jam especially with some hindsight. Technically, the jam's still going on. It's still going through the voting period, but I'm never really interested in who wins these things, really. The fun parts are the submissions that other people make and the actual creation part of it, like the prompt and the deadline, and getting something done with constraints is definitely the most fun part of game jam. So it's basically over for me, which means it's a good time for me to talk about my entry, The Mercy Killing of Partheus, because I am really, really happy with how this turned out, actually, considering the time constraints especially. So you'll be seeing gameplay of The Mercy Killing of Partheus in the background of this video. I recorded that gameplay a few days ago to get some footage to run behind my audio, my commentary. And even just in that playthrough, I actually found a few bugs that I hadn't known about before, including some typos. I was so sure I'd stamped all of those out. At least they were minor things, like missing spaces here and there, or like I missed a control character, where like a pause between a period and the next sentence, I accidentally put it on the wrong line or something. But still, not a big deal. And please cut me some slack if you spot any such silliness, because we only had a week to work on this. That actually makes this the shortest game jam we've had, by a long shot. I think our next shortest game jam was a whole month. If you're only familiar with like the GMTK game jams, like the very biggest game jams, those are usually like 48 hours, but ours are usually longer because we have a smaller community and fewer entrants. But yeah, so we had 1 week, and I'll have opinions to share on the jam itself towards the end of the video. Hopefully my commentary doesn't go for the entire length of the gameplay footage, because I was playing pretty slow. I tried to show off some cool stuff, and I also showed off all the dialogue, or most of it. So this is like an hour-long gameplay footage that I have running in the background. Hopefully I'm not talking over all of that, but this video is only semi-scripted. I'm mostly talking over bullet points, so we'll see if I ramble too much, because I've been known to do that. If this does get super long, I'll add timestamps for the main things I want to cover, including towards the end, talking about the game jam itself. So yeah, this intro was actually partially scripted, believe it or not. I ad-libbed here and there, but mostly I just wanted to go over specific things. The rest of this video is only talking over bullet points, not the script, or it's not scripted word for word. So we'll see how it goes. So even when I played Fates back in the day casually, I've always thought attack stance is super cool. If you haven't played Fates, when two characters are standing next to each other, the character in the back, like the character who's not directly attacking, will chip in their own attack at half power. And I've always thought that was so sick, the teamwork aspect of that. So like a year ago, I made a POC of that mechanic in a proof of concept of that mechanic in SRPG Studio, just to like see if I could get it to work. And it was really buggy, obviously. And I was thinking when I made it, I can't believe I was able to get all that done. I really want to make a project with this. Because like when I played Fates casually, I despised it. I really didn't like much about it. I was definitely more of a story guy back in 2016 when it came out. And that game was an enormous disappointment, and I hated Conquest most of all three of them. I'm sure whichever one you play first will always be the one you love more, but man, I hated Conquest. But I always liked Attack Stance. I always thought, man, imagine if, quote unquote, a good game had Attack Stance. I haven't replayed Fates recently, but I've been watching Zoran videos, and man, my tune is changing. The more I watch them, the more I think, holy shit, I need to play this game. Maybe that is the good game that with Attack Stance that I need to try again. And like playing Engage with its backup attacks was like in all of 2023, I was obsessed with adding extra attacks in cool ways. Like I added stuff to Seas of Novus. Like there's a character who, if he doubles, he'll triple. He'll always chip in 2 pursuit attacks instead of 1. And I added stuff like Bowie can use Echo, so he attacks twice. Echo from like Emblem Celica gets. Shout out to Seas of Novus, by the way. Link in the description. No, I'm just kidding. Well, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, attack stance. So I was like, man, I want to play the game that has attack stance. Like I want to polish this proof of concept up that I made almost exactly a year ago, and implement that, put that in the game, because I think it's so sick. I love attack stance and Fates. Even when I played it casually on normal mode, I thought it was the coolest part about it. So I finally had an excuse to with this game jam. I made attack stance. I made it work. And it works almost the same. Even in the footage, you'll be able to see a few differences that were unintentional. I actually didn't realize until making this that I goofed up the way brave weapons interact with attack stance. They work correctly when the backup unit has a brave weapon, but not when the lead unit does. But it's fine. So yeah, attack stance. It's different in this game also because there's no pair up. I still don't like pair up, really. But the thing is that not having pair up means that there's no defense against attack stance. So enemies having attack stance can be really dangerous, really scary, which was partially why I included Gale weapons, which I'll talk about later. That's another one of the things. And also the enemies are pretty stupid. Compared to Fate's AI, they don't get how to use attack stance in my game. But yeah, I guess another pseudo pair-up, pseudo attack stance related topic is Mori. Mori is the Dark Mage character. I am so thrilled I was able to include him. Him being them, because they're literally 2 people. But yeah, the closest thing I had to like a stretch goal that I could afford for this game, to be to put it in context, I submitted this with 4 minutes to spare after all the playtesting and getting it uploaded. That was a hectic last couple days. But Mori is a character who does their own dual strike. So instead of interacting with attack stance normally, they prevent other units from being their backup, and they do their own 1.5 times attack. And otherwise, they ignore attack stance. Like, they don't block it still. Even though they look like they're a paired up unit, they don't have a defense against attack stance. But I think that's cool. In my eyes, that kind of takes the game from little proof of concept of attack stance to like actually playing with the concept a bit. I'm so happy I was able to get that done. And plus, implementing that faux pair-up mechanic also enabled me to do something interesting with the final boss, who also forcibly takes a pair-up partner. So, Marina. Marina is the main character of Mercy Killing of Partheus. She is basically a general, clad in armor. You never see her face. And I've had her character and her story in my brain forever. I'm probably going to talk about the story later. I'm sure I have a bullet point for that. But she has an interesting synergy with attack stance by existing. Because her thing is that she has Kagger, which is a legendary dark axe. And it behaves like a great weapon from Engage. If she initiates, then the opponent goes first. But as the trade-off, same was with the great weapons in Engage, it has crazy high might. And it can't follow up, but her speed is pretty bad. So I thought an interesting quirk of that is that even though your damage is halved when you're a backup unit, if Marina's holding Kagger, then like she doesn't really care. She's often out damaging the lead because she has this insanely high might weapon. Actually, I can't remember how strong it is. Something like 30 might, whereas normal might is in the single digits for most weapons. So yeah, she's like, it's kind of serendipitous because I've had her in mind forever, and in my brain she's always been the Kagger user, and it just happens to align with some of the game mechanics. And also it's a quote-unquote feature that backup attacks don't take durability. So she is an even better backup because she's giving bonus attacks with Kagger for free. So just by standing nearby, she deals incredible backup damage for free. Like, I think Renea, the fast high skill archer you get at the beginning, her attack is pretty bad at first until she talks with Divinia, her sister. But if she has Marina next to her, then she's usually doing damage like close to 20. She can, and because she doubles things often, she can often just kill them with Marina's help. So I think she's very cool as a protagonist. I think it's kind of hard to pull off an Armor Lord because it often gives you a Roy vibe of character you're constantly just varying from point to point. But I think I found a neat workaround. Is that the right phrasing? With Marina. Like, I found a game she fits in. Yeah, and speaking of backup attacks not taking durability, the double bow, the brave bow, I highly recommend trading it to the person in the back so that it doubles their damage. They can attack twice, so it gives them 2 chances to hit, 2 chances to crit potentially. And it doesn't take uses of the bow because the double bow can really burn through its uses quickly. Yeah, and the Titan bow. Actually, in this footage, I got the Titan bow near the end, and then I forgot to ever use it. But that's another bow that benefits greatly from attack stance because it only has 8 uses. I used to think, oh, this has really high might. It was like 15 might at the time, so I gave it bad accuracy to compensate, like 60 hit or so. But then I realized, wow, this is a terrible piece of shit weapon. Even Renea, who has crazy skill, would struggle to hit the Wyverns with it. So like, why not just use a steel bow? So I was like, fuck it. It's an in-game weapon. You know, you have to go all the way up to the red house to get it, and then you only get 8 uses of it. So it might as well be really accurate and really hard hitting. So I bumped it up to 100 hit, and I actually buffed the might too to 20 might, so that usually it'll one-shot a Wyvern or come very close, or it'll one-shot with attack stance involved. But as a backup weapon, the Titan bow is super good. And yeah, the Dragon Scale Saber, which is the sword that Eric gets from his mom in the first, probably the first village I feel like most people will get. Because it's kind of a tutorial to pivot you over the forest. I'm looking forward to talking about pivot, by the way. The Dragon Scale Saber used to basically just be a killing edge, and it was really, really terrible, and Eric's stats were bad, and I had forgotten to give him luck until right before I submitted. So he was getting crit by enemies, by generics. But yeah, then I gave it effectiveness against Wyverns, and then he became slightly better than an extra warm body, though I still don't think he's very good. Nadia, rest in peace. I'm pretty sure I let her die in this footage. Spoiler alert if I haven't gotten that far. I bounced her attack power directly around the cultists nearby. She'll usually do like 7 or 9 damage, like just shy of 2-shotting them because they have 20 HP. So I made it so you got to interact with attack stance if you want her to one-round things. You have to put like August next to her or Jameson. Because when they work together, then she can get kills. So that's interesting. Yeah, that's most of the things about attack stance I wanted to talk about. I made a lot of, early on especially, I made a lot of math around specific combinations of attacks, especially on the left side because your units are less, I guess, lower density of player units on the left side. Because the right side is the mandatory side, the left side is the optional side. But yeah, as the game went on, I ended up not being able to balance that super great due to time constraints. EXP was like I was barely able to consider EXP at all. I used an auto leveling plugin by Goenza, to a very talented developer, to auto level all the enemies, and I found that the base stats I gave everyone, all the enemies, were really low. So I ended up pretty aggressively leveling all of them, which made it so so you end up fighting these high level enemies that are about the same power level as the player units, so EXP is extremely generous, which worked out serendipitously because I wanted people to level up more. And also I forgot the way backup attack experience works in Awakening and Fates. For some reason, I thought it just halved the EXP given to the backup, but I've been replaying Awakening lately, and that is not half, I promise you that. It's like 10 if she gets a kill, if the backup unit gets a kill. But yeah, so EXP is extremely abundant in this game, and growths are high because I didn't have time to give most characters different growths from the default. Most of them have exactly the default growths plus a 33% weapon level growth, which is pretty funny. I made sure some mages would swap their strength growth with their magic growth, but most other characters I barely touched the growths at all. So that's pretty funny. I even, like I mentioned earlier with Eric, I even forgot to give some units luck until the very end, like very close to the end, because I think by default player units are given 0 luck, or maybe I just have it zeroed out and then I give everyone stats. I forget. But yeah, so to put in context how rushed I was at the end. So that's all there was to say about attack stance. So I wanted to go on to the surprise, in my opinion, the surprise standout star of this whole jam, which was the pivot mechanic. So I've been playing Awakening for on Lunatic for the first time. I played this game like right when it came out on normal, and then a few years later I played it on hard and had a blast. Um, and replaying on Lunatic, I have my nitpicks, especially the swingy nature of its dual strike and dual guard mechanics. Um, Getting them can lead to huge swings in how the level turns out, and sometimes you don't want them. And unequipping weapons is sometimes really clunky or not possible, depending on how you moved. But I'm not here to talk about Awakening mechanics. I think people have talked enough about that 11-year-old game. 12 if you're Japanese. And I've also kind of come around, at least in the early game, to the stat-fixing nature of pair-up. I think it's really interesting. It's really just the dual strikes and dual guards that I am not a fan of. But what I am now a fan of, that I definitely didn't appreciate playing the game before this year, is the movement side of pair-up. It's very fun to, like, in the similar way of, because I've played tons of GBA ROM hacks, the Tellius games, the games with the rescue. Setting up a rescue chain is delightful. Having units set like exactly 8 spaces away from each other so you can ferry a unit across the entire map with multiple paladins because you need your thief in different corners or whatever is very fun. And there's a very similar fun to it with pair up. In chapter, what's the Gangrel chapter? I think it's 11. Shoot, is it 12? Whatever. In the Gangrel chapter, I had I really needed Robin on the right side to protect Muriel, who needed to enemy phase a stage. I needed his solidarity to protect her from crits. But then I really, really needed him on turn 2 to be on the left to pair with Crom so that they could kill several enemies, because most of the enemies come from the left in that map. So what I would do is I would put Frederick just on the edge of some woods between where Robin was waiting, and then I would have Robin go over there, protect Muriel, and then on turn 2, swap over to Frederick, go pair up with him just through the woods, and then Frederick would carry him over. So I thought, man, that was sick, but I don't really love the, like, condensing multiple units' actions into one tile. Like, I don't really love the action economy you lose from it. But I was like, I want to make, and this was before the game jam. This was a long time ago, like middle of last year. I was thinking, I want to make a game that has cool movement that isn't just like literally rescue or pair up. And I never really considered adding pair up because I've never really been a huge fan of it. Awakening has made me come around to parts of it, but it'll take more than that to get me to make a game with pair up in it. But yeah, the movement aspect of pair up is super cool just on the face of it. The way it enables you to carry units around. And I've been replaying Path of Radiance also on my Steam Deck, and like having Mordecai as a pure utility unit where all he does is shove and tank. Like, it's a sort of thing you don't get out of every Fire Emblem game, you know? Just movement is, I don't want to say underappreciated because I feel like everyone likes to schmoove, but it's such a, I guess, unexplored side of fan games, of SRPGs. So here are my train of thoughts that led to what is now the enhanced pivot, like super pivot, that I put in the Mercy Killing of Partheus that you've been seeing me do in the background footage this whole time. My first thought was, all right, how about I give every unit every movement mechanic in whatever next project I work on. Like, think shove and reposition and drawback. All of those movement mechanics are universal. Like, there's a pop-out menu or something. And I was like, maybe if everyone has pivot, they'll actually find a use for it. Because I hate pivot. I've never really used it much at all in any Fire Emblem game that has it. In some games it's really unavailable. Like engage, or like it's tied to a shit class. Like I can't remember who has it in Three Houses, but it was definitely not a class I really used much. So yeah, I usually hate pivot. So I started thinking, okay, so I should probably make pivot cooler if everyone has access to everything, you know? If like, why would you not reposition or shove when you could, yeah, just because you have a pivot doesn't mean you're going to use it. So I thought, what could I do to make it cool? So I was like, maybe you could continue acting out of it. Like you could trade or something, or pivot multiple times. That'd be neat. And then I was like, oh, what if you could like pivot and attack? What if you could pivot and move again? And the more I started to think about it, the more I was like, oh, this is it. I was thinking about specifically that situation with Robin and Frederick in Awakening. And I was like, with this pivot mechanic, you could pivot off of Frederick and then move again, and he could go stand next to Crom and help him. So I was thinking, wait, is this sick? And yes, I think this is, like, I was so excited about attack stance. You heard me talk about it for like 15 minutes. But I think pivot is the coolest part. That's the standout aspect of Mercy Killing of Partheus. Like, from all my play tests, I did like the day of the submission. The whole next like 24 hours, I was getting Tetris effect from it, seeing how I could make pivot chains off of wall decorations and whatever. Yeah, I'm glad I stumbled on this because like having a command menu to choose from a ton of movement options every action would be pretty clunky. You technically have a lot of freedom, but that's so much menuing for something so minor. Like imagine having to press like 6 buttons just to draw back. I feel like that's kind of lame. But yeah, so pivot. Pivot gives you a lot of opportunities in this game. Sometimes very funny. Like, you could just walk straight to the left, or because there's a unit diagonal to you, you could pivot off of them. Like, you'd be technically moving back and then pivot off of them, and that actually gives you one more space of movement. If you pay attention, look at some of the ways I use use pivot in the footage, and you'll see some interesting ways I like nickel and dime extra tiles of movements using pivot. And like if you want to trade with a unit, you can walk up to someone and then trade with them, and then like pivot across and pivot back, and you can move again. So like you can make pivot chains. There's one near the end of this where I make like a staircase of units that I have, I think Ethna pivot off of like 4 or 5 units to get her as far as I could. It might have been Renea. But yeah, the possibilities are like endless with this pivot mechanic. You can, you can do this cool like leapfrog strat. I actually tried to tutorialize that a little bit. The eagle-eyed might have noticed. If you, on turn one, there's a pivot tutorial. When you pivot over August, and by the way, he's a green unit at that point, so that tutorializes that you can pivot over green units. But when you pivot over August, if you move Ceres, his max move range, August can actually pivot off of him because they have the same movement stat of 6. So you can make these like leapfrogs where the units that have the same move can constantly leapfrog off of each other to get further movement every turn, basically double their movement every turn. So you can cross some crazy distances with this. Similar feeling to like rescue chains or pair up chains. So that's cool, and that's kind of just a consequence of the mechanic, not really like something I set out to do. It kind of sounds like I'm really feeling myself, and it's because I kind of am, but also because I was so thrilled that such a simple movement mechanic ended up having so many emergent opportunities that I'm just so excited to share. like all I had was units can move over each other and then they can continue moving, and it was supposed to be kind of like a rescue or pair up substitute, and then it ended up adding all kinds of new tech that it didn't really mean to add, but is there. Like, you can do so many cool things. So I'm sorry if I sound really self-aggrandizing here, but it's really just childlike awe and wonder that this mechanic turned out so well, serendipitously. Yeah, and pivot also lets you bypass terrain. This was important enough to mention that because I added so much terrain on the left side of the map that I tutorialized it at the beginning, having Eric say, "Hey, people should pivot me over the woods, so I can get to the house faster." Because when you see a giant clump of trees, you're probably thinking, "Oh, I'm losing several turns here." But if you're pivot chaining, and like you can have characters pivot over each other just to be a pivot. Like you can pivot 2 units who aren't Eric into the woods. You can move one to the edge of the woods, have someone pivot off of them, and then move 1 space, and Eric can now pivot over 2 units instead of 1. So that kind of thing. Eric tutorializing the forest thing makes me think, like, man, imagine if FE4 Chapter 1 had this. That whole forest would not be nearly as big of a deal. Yeah, so that was a cool thing. And another cool thing I wanted to talk about was usability. When you think about pair up, one of the things that I think is super cool about it is the freedom you get out of it. Like, you can walk up to someone, switch units, switch weapons, try to initiate attacks so you can see a forecast and go, oh, this would be bad, and cancel, and it takes you all the way back to the beginning of the action. So it'll like have you unswitched, and the item you switched will still be there, but like just switching doesn't commit you and say like, well, you should have known, you should have done the math. It lets you make the decision more easily. So that was a kind of feeling I wanted to preserve with pivoting. So like, if you've pivoted, as long as you haven't done a committal action like moving again or attacking or trading or using an item, you can cancel and you can go all the way back to the start of the action. So you can pivot over like 9 units, check a forecast if an enemy is 2 spaces away from a unit you pivot off of, and then decide, oh, I don't like this forecast, and go back. So that was one of the crucial things I wanted to implement with this, and one of the things that I really tried hard, so I hope you appreciate it. Or maybe you think, maybe you're more of a purist and think if someone made that many actions, they should be committed to it. And I will fundamentally disagree if it comes to that, but I hope you do like that addition. I feel like it adds so much smoothness. It adds so much smoothness. It makes it feel smoother when you can do all of that and then like you're not committed. Like, even if you accidentally misclick move again, you can just press cancel and it takes you back to the start. It helps with, like, you don't have to be so precise and make sure you push every button the right exact way. It gives some leniency. So I'm pretty happy with that. Not happy with move again not having a wait command. I really tried to implement that. I feel so bad because I'm always harping on people for not having the confirm wait after move again script. So if you're not like super familiar with SRPG Studio, Canto is built in. Canto being move again for like usually horse units in Fire Emblem. But it's in. But when you actually select a tile to move again, your unit just immediately moves there and waits. Like in most Fire Emblem games, I think any Fire Emblem game that has Canto, after you move again, it asks you wait, and you can press B and go back and choose a different spot to Canto to. Or canter in Engage. But yeah, that's not a thing in vanilla SRPG Studio. And there's a delightful script by Cube, or Magio Man, on SRPG World, or QBU, one of those, which just adds that wait command afterwards. And it's great. And whenever I play a project that doesn't have it, I cry on the inside, and I always send them a message saying, hey, please use this this plugin. It's so important. And then here I am committing a very similar sin with move again out of pivot in my project. So when you move again, it commits you to it. It doesn't give you a wait command. I tried so hard to implement it on time, but it was the more I worked on it, the more I was like, this is such a the idiom is escaping me, but it's like a real problem. It's a big problem, much more than I expected. So I was not able to implement that on time, and for that, I will be sending my apology in the mail to everyone I've ever critiqued for the Canto plugin. So my apologies. I'm such a hypocrite. Yeah, so let's talk about Marina again. She is an armor knight once again. I talked already about how she's great for attack stance because her strong attack power let her, chip in even when she's not really doing much. And also, pivot happens to suit her really well because her move is really bad, but her attack power is really good, so you want to have her keep up. And with the power of pivot and smart positioning, you can do that. You can have Marina move as far as you want her to. So if you have units like Ceres or Eric, who aren't doing much in a turn, or Conley, you can have her pivot over them. You can just position them to enhance Marina. So in that way, pivot also works a little selflessly, because you can have units dedicate their actions to making sure another unit can move farther. So Marina, once her problems are bad move, and her weapon can break, and pivot fixes the first one, and attack stance fixes the second one. So really, the mechanics of this game are really well suited to her, or she's well suited to the mechanics of this game. So armor lords, man, who would have seen the day coming? Speaking of Ceres, by the way, he's kind of dead weight. He can barely damage anybody, unless you like give him a longsword. Maybe I can't remember how much weapon level he has, but I forgot to give a lot of weapons weapon level. I just forgot, I guess. I was going to say, I ran out of time, but no, I would have had 10 minutes to change these numbers if I'd thought to, but I was stressed about other things. But yeah, he's really bad at damaging things with a spider blade. He's kind of dead weight. He's higher move than other infantry, and like I mentioned, he and August have the same move, so they can leapfrog off of each other. So I like sending both of them to the west. So he's good for pivoting, because you rarely need him to attack things. So he's good at helping other units move around, and also his interaction with attack stance. I had to specifically program it in. I guess that was another stretch goal. I talked about Mori being a stretch goal, the paired up unit. The spider blade by a Ceres' weapon was also a stretch goal. The problem I had was when he attacks, his backup attacks will also poison. His attack poisons and the backup attack poisons. But the other way around, when the lead attacked, he would not poison because it was just checking the status effect, the ability to inflict status on the lead. So I had to specifically program in an interaction where if the backup unit has a status effect, then use their status effect, because I knew if someone tried to use Ceres as a backup unit and they didn't poison, I was getting 0 stars for my submission. Because it's so obvious, right? Like, it's the whole appeal. But yeah, so I took extra pains to make sure that worked, and I didn't fix it the other way around. So when Ceres is the lead, he'll poison, and also his backup attack will poison. So I just left that as a bonus. So if he misses for whatever reason, his backup will pick up the slack. We'll call that a feature too, I guess. I could see that being like a skill or something in a game like this. Like backup units also get to use this unit's status effects or whatever. But yeah, it is technically a bug, but one I wasn't interested in fixing because it benefits the player. So that's cool. I wish Ethna. I want to read it as Ethne. She's the singer you get at the end. I probably should have made her availability a bit better because it feels like she doesn't really contribute much. But being able to pivot plus sing, pivot plus dance is pretty cool because it basically gives her 2 extra move anytime she wants to sing. There's nothing as cool as like shelter singing that you get in Fire Emblem Fates, which is a tech. Look it up if you don't know about it. It's very cool. But she benefits from pivot also. You can repair her bad move. Like she starts in the very northeast corner, but even in my footage, you can see I use a lot of pivot chains to get her to the center quickly. And yeah, you have to get her key to the center anyway, but you could just trade it to Divinia. Yeah, so I think that was all I really wanted to talk about pivot. So I'm going to get into some more miscellaneous things I wanted to talk about in that case. So this wasn't really like a topic I had scripted, but there were 2 other game mechanics, kind of. Game mechanic is kind of a stretch that I included in Mercy Killing a Partheus that I experimented with it in another game a long time ago that I never ended up releasing. And those were Gale weapons, like a Gale series of weapons, and weapon level. And those are, not really related. Gale weapons are generally higher weapon level. I guess I'll talk about weapon level first if I'm on that subject. I think weapon level is a pretty unexplored stat. If you're not familiar with old Fire Emblem, this was a stat only in Fire Emblem 1 and 3 and Tearing Saga, and kind of Berwick Saga, though in that one no, Berwick Saga had... I'm not talking about Berwick Saga. But Visteria Saga did for sure. Weapon level is the vanilla state of SRPG Studio, where it's a stat. In vanilla, it grows with a growth rate like any other stat, and that's pretty much all there is to it. Is a weapon has a weapon level stat, and a unit has a weapon level stat, and a unit has to have a weapon level higher than the weapon's weapon level. And I think that can lead to some interesting. It's an unexplored design space, I should say. In those games, Fire Emblem 1 and 3, well, all of the games, I suppose, that have it, all it is just, hopefully you level it up, it increases, and then you can wield the better weapons. So it's, I feel personally that the weapon level, or the weapon rank system that they replaced it with I'll say Fire Emblem 5 onward, because it's the first game where it can change and build, is more interesting. But weapon level, that doesn't mean writing off weapon level is something I would ever consider. And one way I played with it a little in this game is weapon level can be debuffed. And I would love to explore this mechanic more in a longer game, but I think even this much is pretty neat. There are poison, like the Spider Blade, inflicts poison status, which debuffs all of your stats, including weapon level, by 2. There's the Tilt Tome, which is, if you didn't notice, it's a play on the Thunderstorm Tome, both being Halo references. But the Tilt Tome makes it so you lose 5 weapon level, and it grows back each turn. It's just like a seal strength kind of thing, but it's seal weapon level. So that means you can't use the higher rank weapons. And I think so Yuaka also comes from another game of mine that I didn't release. All the legendary weapons, this whole setting did. I'll get on the story later. But Yuaka and Yuaka's Spirit they debuff everything by 4 in this game, except for move. In the original game they're from, they also debuffed move, but I found that was too powerful in this game, or too debilitating. So a rare balance decision I was able to make with being so low on time. I just removed its move debuff, but it debuffs weapon level. The effects of that are pretty limited in Mercy Killing of Partheus because I didn't take much time to balance the weapon levels of many weapons. Like I only realized after I released it that I didn't give a weapon level stat to the Guardian Spear, which I had definitely intended to be a high weapon level weapon. So that was one you would lose access to if you got poisoned or Yuaka's Cursed or tilted. Yeah, so it's kind of half-baked in that way, in that most of the weapons probably have a weapon level of 0, so they have no cost. And I don't think there are any units that start with less than 5 weapon level. So it's probably not possible. Actually, I don't even know if it can be debuffed below. I'd have to test how that works. Basically, a weapon level of 0 is free. So they just don't interact with the weapon level debuffing system. And I feel like it would be pretty complicated to display all of that in such a short game. Like you're not going to intuit immediately that a weapon has this much weapon level versus this other one. But it leads to another avenue for strategy, going in, when you attack, you're going to get debuffed. So you need to have whatever you're going to get debuffed to as your secondary weapon. Like you go in, you swing your Kagger was the only weapon I was really conscious about making this for. When Marina gets debuffed, she can't use Kagger because it's extremely high weapon level requirement. But yeah, it can lead to a layer of strategy when there's debuffing involved. And if I were making a longer game, or if I had had like another week to work on this one, I would have expanded on weapon level some more too. The Gale weapons tend to have higher weapon level, so because they can just hard counter a whole chunk of your army, being able to debuff their weapon level so that other units can attack would be a play you could do. Or maybe you don't have enough weapon level to use a good weapon, so you could take a weapon level tonic, which buffs you for a few turns or something, so you can use a weapon that normally you can't. Or maybe like a skill gives you more weapon level, or you can conditionally get more weapon level by doing A, B, and C. Maybe if you have this much more weapon level than the weapon's requirement, you get like a boost to your hit or damage or something, kind of like an A rank bonus in Shadow Dragon through Fates. How you get like +3 attack at A rank swords kind of thing, plus like 15 lance hit or whatever. That kind of thing could be interesting. But I just kind of spitballing pretty much because I didn't do most of that. I played with weapon level a little bit. I hope other games can do this too, because weapon level is really neat, and I hope I hope I get to explore it more. I want to make more of this kind of game, Seas of Novus is nothing like this kind of game. It's more like an RPG than an SRPG in certain ways. And making this game was a breath of fresh air in that regard. But yeah, barely dipped my toes in the water of weapon level, but I still thought it was neat. And yeah, I guess I'll talk about Gale weapons since I already mentioned it several times. Gale weapons, they seal a certain weapon type. If you played this and you got to Elaine on the left side of the map, then Gale Lance is super busted here. Because it's about weapon sealing. It's about it's playing with seal mechanics, like how Jeddah can seal your attacks for a few turns in Gaiden and SOV. or for a certain number of attacks, rather, in SOV. But yeah, Gale weapons are not only like a fuck this guy in particular kind of weapon. Like most enemies only have one kind of weapon. Most enemy types even. Like a big exception are the Wyverns, and I'm going to talk about them too. Because they can have lances or axes, but they never have both. So if you have a Gale axe, which Santos or Cantos joins with, I mixed them up myself. The starting fighter joins with a Gale axe, so he can just choose his matchup basically. And the Wyverns are so threatening that it's handy to have someone who can just face tank them. It's kind of like if you have a dodge tank Fram and Engage or something, who the enemies just won't target her, except these guys actually will target him and will just like their attack goes away and he gets to swing at them for free. This also, again, serendipity. These Gale weapons come from my other older project that didn't have attack stance. Sealing an attack also seals the backup attack. So this is kind of an alternative to pair up as a dual attack, an attack stance, a dual strike blocker. So you can use, if you think an enemy is going to have a really tough dual attack, you can use a Gale axe to block it. And that's cool. And it only works in specific matchups, so it's not free. And I think that's neat. Yeah, I might as well talk about the Wyverns. I wasn't planning on talking about them yet, but I might as well since I'm on the subject. The Wyverns are intentionally bastards. If you played it, you probably, or you may have thought, well, they're not bastards. You have so many tools, and that's because I gave you so many tools. I gave you 3 archers, a Titan bow that almost insta-kills them, a mage who's pretty good against them, and a lot of them are tinked, or they tink Santos with a Gale axe, or whoever you give the Gale axe to. Marina could also hold it. The younger brother can't, because he has too low weapon level. Yeah, the Wyverns were inspired by FE6 because I like archers. Archers are cool, and I like games where archers are good. And I feel like there are 2 main ways to make them good, and that's 1, to give them a good, well, I guess 3. 1, make enemies that are tough, that are really tough. You really don't want to take an attack from them. I don't really have those in this game. Most of the enemies are kind of pushovers relatively. I even leveled them up pretty aggressively to try to get more stats on them so they wouldn't be such pushovers. But in the end, they're still not that tough. They go down relatively easily for the most part, except for the Armor Knights, I guess, and the Wyverns, who have 1 less defense than the Armors. But it worked out for the EXP gain. I was very happy the EXP gain turned out so well, the EXP curve, because you end up getting a lot of levels. It is not rare to see double level ups, which I think is cool. I'm glad I'm able to show that off because that was a bitch and a half to implement. I guess it wasn't that bad comparatively, compared to some of the other stuff I had to implement. But yeah, Wyverns. That's another thing that make archers good is having a good target to poke. The Wyverns in Fire Emblem 6, if you haven't played it, Fire Emblem 6 hard mode, the Wyverns are awful. Chapter 7, the Wyverns are extremely tough for most of your units to deal with, to the point that it legit gives your crappy FE6 early game archers, who are infamously bad, Wolt and Dorothy, and Sue, who's also not great, it gives them all a very legit niche because they can hit the Wyverns for great damage. They're not like one-shotting them, but they're doing like Marcus with the Silver Lance level damage. Extremely good. So that's cool, right? Because that gives those archers time to shine. Like you never have to field any of those 3 again after that. If you want to go Sakai route for some reason, you would want to bring Sue, but you're probably using her anyway. And you might have power leveled her a bit in Chapter 6 because the enemies are so much weaker in that chapter. I'm talking about Fire Emblem 6 for some reason, beyond my 1 point. Another game where archers are cool is, shocker, surprise, surprise, Fate's Conquest. Because they can get multiple actions per turn. With attack stance, you can attack multiple times. That gets you a lot more EXP, and in that game, weapon EXP. Which is neat, because like the archer's whole problem is no enemy phase, but with attack stance, you can get several several player phase actions. So that was another thing I wanted to capitalize on. I gave you 3 archers. I don't know if I can't remember if there are any other weapon types I gave you 3 of besides axes. Yeah, I think I gave you 2 swords, and Ceres sucks. 1 mage, 3 mages, I guess. One's a healer and Mori's weird, but 1 normal mage. And then a couple of lances. Oh, I guess 3 lances because Elaine. I'll talk about Elaine. She's a funny inclusion. But yeah, the Wyverns are bastards in this game on purpose. They're inspired by Epi6. They hit hard, and they have really high bulk and HP. Like, they have HP in the 50s in the final section. But if you have the Titan Bow at that point, which I can't remember if it directly one-shots or if it just like knocks them down to the teens. But yeah, I didn't realize until after the fact. I messed up the effectivity calculation. It turns out that SRPG Studios' vanilla effectiveness thing is it doubles your attack power at the end. Right before it calculates defense, it calculates it multiplies your attack power. So like it works just like a Fire Emblem 4 crit or a 5 crit. So I guess it's identical to a Fire Emblem 4 effective weapon in that sense. But in any case, it doesn't triple the weapon might like I wanted. So the 20 might Titan Bow is technically nerfed compared to how good it would be in Fire Emblem. But it's still, I mean, it does well enough. And again, you can use it for attack stance shenanigans. So it gets more than just 8 actions. So yeah, that's the Wyverns, this weapon level, that's Gale weapons. Yeah, man, I'm kind of bummed I wasn't able to do more with weapon level. Another mechanic I was considering doing, but it was a stretch goal from the beginning. I was never thinking I was actually going to do it. Was I wanted more characters to have skills. You might have noticed that Marina has a skill. It's Deep Breaths from that I made for Seas of Novus, which works similar to Relief from Awakening. In that game, if there's no one within 3 spaces, you heal like 10 or 20% of your HP. In this game, if no allies are directly adjacent, you gain 4 HP. Exact same skill in Seas of Novus. And I also copy-pasted another skill, Dexterity Edge, that I gave to Conley, thinking I was going to give more characters more skills, which just like barely affects him, I feel. It gives him more crit, but I didn't even realize. I was thinking, because I forgot I gave him the skill, and then I finished the game and released it, and I was like, oh my god, wait, he has the skill? Did I even implement it? And I double-checked, and I did, but it barely changes anything. Yeah, I was going to give characters more skills. As soon as I made the project, I gave Marina Deep Breaths because I was like, this suits her character and it's cool. And it's nice for a fearless leader to have some healing because it's possible she'll be falling behind. Though in practice from my tests, she often doesn't fall behind that bad. Or at least she's adjacent to one of their characters, so her skill doesn't come into play very often. But I was thinking I was going to substitute EXP for something where characters build a bond with each other every time they perform attack stance. And that bond lets them borrow one of their allies' skills. Obviously, that's a huge implementation question. And I was thinking, I only have a week. Attack stance is going to have bugs, and it did. I'm glad I was able to polish it up a lot, but I would not call it polished. Um, yeah, I'm still really pleased I got status weapons to work with backup attacks, but yeah, I was never really serious about implementing that. I was hoping I would be able to, just to experiment with it, because I'd like to in some future project. And that will have to wait for some future project, because I didn't make that here. Yeah, I guess I'll talk about Mutiny. Mutiny was a project I was going to work on last year, actually for the it was for a different jam, for a jam called Marth that was last spring. I was tempted to make a project revolving around attack stance with Mutiny. It was called Mutiny, the game, and it would have had like multiple endings and a bigger map. Vaguely similar premise, not story wise, but gameplay wise, and that you're like in a city and you need to split up into different zones. But it would have been neat, but I'm glad I didn't do it because attack stance was not ready at the time. It had some serious bugs. It was cool though. I lifted several character names from Mutiny that I was going to use for that, because I've had the story of Mercy Killing of Partheus, this setting, in my brain for a while, but not all the characters, so borrowed some characters. Mori, for one, was lifted straight out of that, though I changed their backstory to suit the new setting instead of just being mysterious they them. I've been talking for a long time, and I feel like I should get a move on some things. So I'm going to talk about the jam itself for a bit, just a bit of retrospective on the actual jam. First thing I want to talk about is the timing, because for some ungodly reason, this started on a Saturday night, and I'm in America, so like this was like 9 p.m. my time, and I'm in a relatively western zone. I don't know if anyone, I don't know the time zones of everyone who participated, but surely there were some people who are much further east than me who basically didn't get any Saturday at all. Like I was working into the dead of night implementing Pivot on that Saturday. So basically, they only had part of Sunday, if that, and then a work week, and then Saturday and part of Sunday of the following weekend. So I think that was really bad, really poorly done, and I think it should absolutely have started on Friday. There's no reason whatsoever that it should have started Saturday night, because that basically means we only got to work on it, because that was a busy work week for me, and I'm sure it was even busier. From what I heard, several people had to drop because they had work that week, you know? Like they were barely able to touch their game jam projects. So, like, sure, we had a week, but did we really? I worked on it Saturday night till like 11 or so, and then part of Sunday, and then I was barely able to work on it throughout the week. I scrounged up an hour or so every day, if that, and then binged everything that I'd been putting off on Saturday and especially Sunday. I was working on it all day Sunday. I got up at like 9 and was working on it until I think it was due at like 6 or 7. I turned it in 4 minutes early, or 4 minutes ahead of time, with 4 minutes to spare, I should say. So basically, we had like a weekend and a half, not a week. And why didn't it start on Friday? Why would I don't want to be too harsh. The host is a really nice dude, but I think that was a really bad mistake, and we should not repeat it. Friday is when it should have started, and not Saturday. So we could have gotten 2 weekends to work on it, and not 1.5 at best. Another thing I wanted to talk about. I thought I was going to be really hostile about this point, but I ended up coming around on it. When it was first announced, I thought this prompt sucks. The prompt of this jam was Shattered Empires, and when I first saw that, I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Because the 2022 One for All Jams theme was Tournament Arc. And for that one also, I think I was pretty vocal that I really hate jam prompts that are based on like the setting and the story. Like, isn't the gameplay what we're all here for? So I thought it was lame. I was like, how did we not learn our lesson? I thought, I mean, I'm sure I don't know if anyone was as opinionated about it as I was, but I feel pretty strongly that game jam prompts should be gameplay themed. And for some people, this did kind of inform the gameplay. There was the chess one. That was interesting. And probably the best use of the theme was, what was it called? Something crystal. It was like you're based on a huge map, and you explore the entire world. Shard Saviors, I remember. Shard Saviors. That one had a really cool use of the theme because it was all about like actually, it felt like you were rebuilding the empire. Like as you like defeat bosses and seize their little village area, it like makes roads appear that make it easier to cross the world. So that one was neat. So I will say I haven't really come around, but this did enable me to explore this world that I've wanted to explore forever. I'll talk about the story after this. But yeah, because I was thinking at first, like, how am I going to even do anything with this? And then I thought for a bit, and I was like, oh, wait, I have something, I think. So yeah, I stand by what I said, that a gameplay prompt is way better than a setting or story prompt. And I think we should definitely do gameplay prompts. Like, don't make Fire Emblem from a few years ago the best prompt we've ever done. That one was so fascinating. So, I said I was reading from a bullet list for all of my talking points. This bullet point was just, this prompt sucks. But I don't feel that strongly about it. It enabled some creativity from others, and it enabled me to do a thing I've wanted to do. But I think we should not make a habit of making these story-focused. But that's my opinion. I hope I'm listened to, but we'll see. All right, I might as well talk about the story. I've been pussyfooting around it for too long. I like the story because it's been in my brain for a really, really long time. In 2018, I started working on a game called Understanding, and that was like my introduction to SRPG Studio. So it was how I learned a lot of eventing and stuff. And at this point in my life, I was a college student. I was like really pissed off at all my classes, so I hated programming. So I loved this engine because I could do so much Fire Emblem-y stuff without needing to know how to program. And if you like only know me repeat for my plugins, that might be pretty funny. That it took me a long time to come around to programming, and then it felt like I had found my calling with the engine, and it's really fun. But as I started to get into programming, I started to realize, man, this like really vanilla project I started with is very boring to make, and it wasn't very fun. I'm not going to get into that project too much, but the world of that project, the story of it, I've always wanted to come back to. And it's set in the same world that the Mercy Killing of Partheus is in. It's set on the continent of Partheus. This story takes place in year 309 and is basically a part of the backstory of that game, because that game takes place in year 584, where the events of the deeds of Marina have passed into legend. Yeah, so man, I want to work on this more so bad. I want to go back to that game. I have so many more ideas now that they're like huge programming challenges that I want to overcome. I have so many like levels in my brain, so many ways I can enhance and improve the story now that I can make cooler gameplay scenarios to fit it, and cooler gameplay mechanics. At the moment, I hope it's not... It might just be a motivation thing. I don't know. But man, it's so much more enticing to me right now than actually working on Seas of Novus. I want to make another game like Mercy Killing of Partheus. I don't really want to make. It's such a shame because I've been working on Seas of Novus for so long. It's just the other week, or no, just a few days ago, March 14th at the time of recording. The game turned 2, and I haven't put out a second release yet. I put a whole post on the Fire Emblem Universe post. I'm going to link that in the description too, I think, in case you want to read more about Seas of Novus. Because it's got a lot of cool stuff. And when I play Baldur's Gate, it makes me want to make more Seas of Novus, because that's more similar to Seas of Novus than, like, Fate's Conquest. Yeah, I'm just kind of navel-gazing at this point, I suppose. I would love to explore this world and these characters more. It feels like it's years away, but we'll see. I would love to. I'm only getting this, like, serious about it, wistful, I suppose, because at this point we're, I don't know, like 40 minutes into the video, maybe more. So if you've listened this far, maybe you care about my opinions, or maybe you just needed something to fall asleep to. I won't shout, don't worry. Yeah, so that's all I've got to say about this story. I like it. The characterization and stuff of characters, I'm glad I was able to pack so much into this in such a short time frame. I really did knuckle down on making sure almost everyone has dialogue. I don't think I missed anybody. I think everybody has something to say. So that's cool. I wanted everyone to feel like characters, and like you're seeing a small glimpse of a larger story, because the larger story is all in my brain. And I hope the fact that all of that story is in my brain is reflected a little bit in the game. I hope you came away thinking it really feels like there's more to this, because there is, and I hope I get to share it with you someday. I'm going to let the rest of the gameplay play out. There's a little bit more. This is a post-recording after everything else. Yeah, so it'll go for another 15 minutes or so. But I'll put I'll put timestamps, because yeah, this video did turn out way longer than I thought, and it's actually going to go even longer. Because I have a little section at the end, at about an hour and a half in, where I'll talk some more. But I'll let the gameplay finish, so you can keep watching if you want, or you can skip ahead. So it's just going to be a video game for a bit. Alright, see you in a bit. So let's make this a little more fun. I want to talk more about the characters, the gameplay side of the characters of the Mercy Killing of Partheus, and what better way to do that than making a good old-fashioned tier list. Take 2, because I recorded all of this and it didn't keep any of my audio. So let's do it again. From the top, Marina. What more could be said about Marina that I haven't already said? She synergizes extremely well with the 2 chief mechanics of Mercy Killing of Partheus. She has extremely good backup attacks, with Kagger being so incredibly powerful. Having 20 might. That's the same as the Titan bow. And she gets it turn 1, and she can use it in backup attacks. She can use it at 1 range. She's not perfect. She has really low move, and her res is only okay. She kind of needs the Kagger to be able to take magic hits. It gives 5 res. And the Kagger also behaves like a great weapon, the engaged kind, that makes it so if she uses it, she's going to be taking a hit. So she can't like wipe out a mage in 1 hit with it without getting a counter attack, because she will take the hit first. But because she's so high value when she's in position, it's often worth it to sacrifice another unit's action to get her into position, because another unit can act as a pivot, and then she can move off of that unit, or multiple units even, to be able to get where she needs to be, either to attack or to just stand there and be a beautiful backup attacker. So she's extremely good, and she has deep breaths on top of everything else. I don't think it's super impactful, though she like appreciates the healing every now and again, because I didn't give her a healing item to start with. Mostly so people would notice the skill, but also because other characters have healing items, and she has such good bulk. I do think the fact that you need to reposition units to make her, to get her into position, can be troublesome. So I don't think she's S tier, but I think she is comfortably A tier at worst. I'm sure people who didn't use the pivot mechanic, people who don't use the pivot mechanic much, will have a much worse opinion of Marina, because having 4 move in such a big map where you really need to be moving fast seems like such a problem, but it's really not that bad with if you use pivots smartly. So let's talk about August. August is really good except for this little number right here, this little ditty about Jack and Diane. He is really bad at killing things. His strength is terrible, and without the Guardian Spear, like you could even see in the footage from before, using the Steel Spear, he is really struggling to kill things. Sometimes even wounded things, if I remember right. But the Guardian Spear gives him 3 strength, and it also improves his bulk. And it makes it so the Dark Mages go from barely doing anything to him to tinking him. So he's really good on the left side especially. He flies over all of the foresty terrain, he owns the Dark Mages, and he makes it really easy to move around. And he performs a nice little leapfrog with Ceres, since they both have 6 move. So I think he's S tier. He doesn't have anything to do in the last room, but he is good pretty much the entire rest of the game. He's even decent on this side if you deal with the Archer. And the Archer's not that big of a problem, because the Archer is approach. As soon as your guy spawns, Archer starts moving. So he's quick to deal with. It's not like he's holding down the fort here. So August, S tier. Ceres. Ceres is pretty bad. Even as the default growths, except for the 33 weapon level I gave to almost everybody. So he does have some stuff going for him. He has 6 move, which is the best of any non-mounted unit. I think tied for best with mounted units. Well, these horses have 7. Oh yeah, it's 7 for horses, 6 for flyer, and 5 for everyone else, or 5 or 4 for everyone else except Ceres, who gets 6. So he has good moves, so he performs a leapfrog with August, which is good. They double each other's move every turn if they're pivoting off of each other. He also has backup utility as a Spider Blade user, the only Spider Blade user. He can debuff everyone for by 2 to every stat, including weapon level. 2 points debuff, not super great. even in this game where the caps are so low, I made it so everything caps at 20, like FE3 and FE5. Even in this game, -2 to stats is not that impactful. It's okay at times. Like, I'm sure it saved him from dying, but it's not amazing. And speaking of dying, he's extremely good at that. 18 HP, and then these are his defenses: 2 def, 4 res. Yeah, he gets one shot by lots of enemies and is easily 2 shot by lots of enemies in attack stance. So he is extremely frail. It's hard to even poke things, which is why you need to use him as a backup. For the most part, I find the most useful thing he can do is pivot around, is be a pivot for other units, and he can be good at that. It's nice to have a unit whose action is not super valuable, I guess. That's low praise, but that's the best he's got. You don't really care what you're doing with Ceres very often, so you can easily use him as a pivot. So yeah, that's what I think about him. I think the Spider Blade debuffs the final boss, Sophronius, enough that he can't use Zyria. So if you want to set up that nightmare of that like terrifying backup attack with him in range of a Brave 2 range sword, then you could do that, and I think that would be fine. C tier though, which is the lowest tier I've made. Renea, I think, is really good. She even has a cool little feather in her hair. I mean, she has extremely good skill, 12 skill. Compare this to Conley's 4 and her sister's 7. Renea is extremely accurate. She is probably the most accurate character in the whole game. She's extremely good at backup attacking, and also because of her high skill, she's the best user of the longbow, because longbow is so inaccurate. It has like 60 hit. 70 hit. I must have buffed it. But yeah, so really good at hitting things even with the longbow. And if she has the longbow, because that expands her threat range, she can be a lot more creative with who she uses as a backup, and also other units, because of the way she can position herself, are very pleased how easily they can use her as a backup attacker. So I think she is extremely good. And on top of everything else, the Explorer class can walk on water, so she even has tiny, low-value niches at best of being able to cross water too. But it's like a cherry on top, I guess. She can do that if she really wants to. And she's pretty fast. So I think she's S tier, comfortably. She's pretty damn good at killing things, and probably your best anti-Wyvern. So yeah. Eric is... I don't think I could have made a more mid unit if I'd tried. He even has all of the vanilla growths. A lot of characters have all the vanilla growths. I forgot to even mention, I gave her 100% weapon level growth. You need 9 weapon level to use the Titan bow, and I wanted her to be able to do it because she's so good that it felt bad for her to not be able to use the Titan bow. So I changed this from 33 to 100 for her. So she only needs 1 level and to talk to Divinia, which gives her 2 more weapon level and she's guaranteed to be able to use the Titan bow. So yeah, that's extra favoritism, I guess. I didn't really mean it as favoritism because it didn't mean for her to be so good. I thought her strength was bad, and then I played the game and I realized it wasn't. Speaking of, 1 more strength than her. Yeah, this dude gets a prof weapon. That is super rare. I think Marine is the only other one that gets a prof weapon. And yeah, he's still bad. It's a killing edge that's super effective against Wyverns, which is cool because that means he deals a good chunk. Even as a backup, he's pretty good at chipping the Wyverns. But I mean, it's still not that great. His hit's kind of bad. His speed is not good enough to be 1 range locked. But he's not like terrible at anything. He's just fine. He doesn't really have huge flaws that are surprising. Like obviously he doesn't have 1 range or 2 range or 1-2 range. But he's okay at 1 range. He can fight some guys, and he because he has a crit weapon, he always has a clutch factor of being able to just kill someone before they can hit him back. Or he can his backup attacks also let him take advantage of it multiple times a turn. so it makes his critical hits more likely. So he's decent, but like he's passable, but he's not that good. I'd put him in B tier. So Santos, this is the fighter you start with, and this guy is top heavy, we'll say. 16 strength, and no other stat is in double digits. He has exactly enough weapon level to use the Gale Axe. I made it 7 so that he could use it. And all he does is just hit things really hard and face tank enemies with lances, especially Wyverns. So what makes him good is just that he hits hard, pretty much. And he can use the Gale Axe. So he's kind of carried by his weapon. That's not super valuable. His hit isn't that good. The Gale Axe isn't particularly accurate. And he has basically nothing to do here. The Wyverns here, one of them does have a lance. Oh, they both have lances, and some of these guys all have lances. But even then, like, he's still not that good here. He dies really easily up here. I think he's much better suited to hold his Gale Axe, and when these guys spawn, they spawn as soon as you open this door. When these back spawns appear, you keep him available to block them. So I think he's okay. I don't think he's amazing, but I love his archetype in Fire Emblem, like the Lots of the world, the Garcias, the Boyds, the guys who just hit really hard and do nothing else. Like, I love these guys. But yeah, B tier. He has niches, but he's not. But he dies. he dies. Speaking of dying, Kantos fucking sucks. I'm sorry, guys. This guy is bad, and I made a stinker. So first off, not enough weapon level to use the Gale Axe. You need to get him multiple kills to hopefully 1 in 3 chance get it every level. And then he would need to proc that twice. And his damage is really bad. He has less than half of Santos' strength stat. And he's supposed to be the fast one. I gave him 5 more speed than Santos. But this is slower than Eric, and Eric isn't that fast. Like, what was I thinking? He has more res, which doesn't matter. He can kind of poke mages better, and he gets 1-2 range because he starts with a throwing club. But the throwing club, I don't think, has a weapon level. Yeah, it's one of the weapons I didn't give a weapon level stat to. So yeah, he's not great. He's pretty bad actually, but not useless. He does deal valuable chip. He spawns in a great spot, right in the middle of the action, so you will be using him. And unless you like really beeline your high move units over here. And he also, little known fact, gives a support to Santos. He gives 3 attack and 10 hit when they're within 3 spaces of each other. I think it's 3 spaces. Yeah, 3 spaces. So yeah, also I forgot to mention Renea and Divinia also do that for each other. 3 power, 10 hit. All the supports are 3 attack and 10 hit. But yeah, so he's not useless, even if he's just next to Santos, and even if he's just holding his throwing club, which has 3 might, so he has 10 attack, so he's tanking most enemies. The Wyverns and Armor Knights both have at least 11 base defense. Even then, he's still giving 3 more attack to Santos and fixing his hit a little bit, because his hit is bad. His skill is as bad as Conley's, but he has a less accurate weapon. So he's not useless at all. I think that puts him better than Ceres, if I'm being honest. So I think, well, no, probably not, actually. Ceres also has niches. I'll put Kantos in C tier. Bad unit. Speaking of bad units, I really do not like Conley. He's kind of like a Santos, but for archery. He again has the default growths, because I didn't change those for almost anybody. What he's supposed to be is just a guy who hits Wyverns once for high damage. Like, he's supposed to be Dorothy. He has a high strength stat, high base strength. It's actually double Renea's base strength. But he sacrifices pretty much every other stat for that. And he's only 1 weapon level shy of Titan Bow, but that's less guaranteed than Renea's path to the Titan Bow, because he still needs a coin toss. If you proc 2 levels, it's probably about like a 50% chance or so to get it in 2 levels. But yeah, you have to feed him kills and backup attack experience, and he's not great at that because his accuracy is so bad. His skill is really low, so not very good. He's actually get the longbow off of him as soon as possible because Divinia and especially Renea are much better users of it than him. He will miss every shot. I also gave him Dexterity Edge, which is a skill from Seas of Novus. This is a really low impact skill. I totally forgot I gave it to him until after the game released. What the skill does is it just changes the formula for critical rate. So usually it subtracts 5 from your skill when it's getting your crit. So actually usually he has 0 innate crit, but the skill changes it so it takes skill times 2 instead of skill minus 5. So he instead goes from 0 crit to 8 innate crit. As you can imagine, that's still not very good. I didn't even notice it any of the times I've used him. So yeah, super low impact skill, extremely forgettable, does not impact his viability whatsoever. He's never going to crit things anyway, because the skill is so bad. His skill stat is so bad that the skill doesn't help him. And he doesn't even hit that hard. Like, sure, he has double Renea's strength, but Renea is hitting twice. So like for a normal enemy, she's doing 14 plus 14, 28. So she's doing 28 and he's only doing 12 plus 8 is 20. So yeah, he's still not even that good at that. And versus flyers, forget about it. He's not, like, Renea's not often doubling flyers either, but sometimes he misses them. Like, he's not that good at hitting them. He does have one more move than her. 6 move, like a thief, which was a last ditch effort I made to make him a little bit better. But I don't think it's very noticeable. I don't think he's that good. But he's, once again, a decent pivot bot. Decent pivot point. And the fact that he's good against Wyverns, like, he can still hit Wyverns for a huge chunk, and there are a lot of Wyverns and they're really tough. So I think that puts him above like Ceres and Kantos, because he does get to fight things, even if he gets obliterated by the final room. So I think that's good enough for B tier. Divinia, now we're talking. So she starts with the Brave Bow, the double bow, and she has the highest speed of any of the archers. I've always had a feeling that Renea was faster, but she's not. She starts with 10 with the same growth, and she starts with 11 with that growth. So yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. But yeah, the double bow is great. It's a Brave Bow. She gets to use it at base. She also has enough weapon level for the Titan Bow at base. And she has the highest move. She's tied with Nadia for the highest move of all of your units. So she is extremely good at repositioning herself and just being anywhere she needs to be. Like, this space is a lot more crowded than it looks. Divinia can pretty much be anywhere at any time. So she's really good. I think she's A tier. Nadia, I also think, is A tier, but for a different reason. I think she's A tier because she matches up, because of necessity, you know? She faces off against enemies who don't attack her on enemy phase, so she doesn't need an enemy phase, really. So her lack of reliable 2 range, the throwing spear isn't that good, but her lack of reliable 2 range is not a problem because she doesn't need to be enemy phasing things. And I tailor-made all of these fights to her skill level. I made it so she just barely doesn't 2-shot enemies, so that she needs a backup attack, because I want people to use the backup attack mechanic. And I also gave her, I buffed her res and her HP as needed when she was doing really poorly against the mages in my early playtests. So the whole left side is really balanced around Nadia. And I think she's good. She's got high movement. And, you know, she She can use the Guardian Spear, which I didn't realize until after I released the game, because I forgot to give the Guardian Spear any weapon level requirement. It costs 0. So she can use it for free. So that's a buff of 3 to all of her stats, and that probably makes her, like comparably good to August with the Guardian Spear. She gets impeded by terrain, but like terrain's not that bad. Like I think she could have a case for S tier if I showed her more favoritism, like gave her the Guardian Spear and stuff. But I think I'll say she's A tier, just because in the end she's not one-shotting the or one-rounding the Dark Mages by herself, unless you give her the Guardian Spear. And yeah, she doesn't have a lot of HP, so she gets killed. I think she gets one-shot by the Tenebrate Lambda guys, so she can't really threaten those guys at all. Actually, that's how she died in my recording that I had on in the background earlier. I messed up. I forgot that this guy was paired up, even as I was fighting him. So like I was celebrating having killed him with all of my actions, and then I realized, oh wait, oh my god, he has another health bar. Obviously, because when you kill one, when you kill the duo, it turns into a single unit afterwards, because only one of them is dead, is the thing. So I was like, ah, crap. So I had to choose between either using withdraw to get her away with Jameson, or heal Mori so that they don't die. And then, yeah, I chose Mori, because Mori is more fun. So I don't know. I feel like Nadia being able to die, like getting one shot like that, and then, I don't know. Maybe I'm not being fair. Maybe giving her the Guardian Spear would be good enough to make her amazing, but I've never tried that because I didn't realize it was an option. My B. I'm putting her in A tier anyway. Screw it, who cares? Jameson. I love Jameson. Jameson is another character who had the default growths for a long time, but I eventually realized, because he kept getting strength, so I realized he had the default 60 strength growth and 10 magic. But I thought, I kind of like him being a mage without amazing magic. He also doesn't even have great res. Because it's like kind of emphasizes that he's not a combatant, like I like low magic mages or clerics and priests, because like it makes the weaker state or the stronger staves matter more. Like when you think about like late game Natasha or something in Sacred Stones, by the end of the game she doesn't need recover at all, and often even mend is overkill. Because she'll have magic in like the 20s. She's healing like 30 plus HP with heal. So I think it would be neat if she had bad magic so that the stronger staves were more important. That's something I like about Nana in FE5. Yeah, so I think he's cool, but that doesn't mean he's good. But he is pretty good, I think. He's a good backup attacker. He has a lot of staff utility that's mandatory if you don't have a big group over here. The restore staff, or the recover staff you get from Mori and from one of these guys, one of the reinforcements to the north. Those recover staves, they don't care about your magic stats, full heal. And he's one of only 2 staff users in the game, and he gets withdraw and revitalize and far healing all by default. Revitalize is a fortify. So yeah, I think he's good. I don't see how that wouldn't be A tier. I love Azar. Azar is a mage, is the mage basically, the archetypal mage, confident, high magic, joins early, hits hard, and basically nothing else. High res even, but it doesn't really matter much for him. So Azar's deal, what makes him so cool is Thunderstorm. He is definitely carried by his weapon. Thunderstorm being 3 range magic means he can be extremely creative with where he places himself for backup attacks, for utilizing attack stance, both on his turn and for his allies' turns. I even gave him 80 magic.
He also had the default growths, but I realized instantly that he needed high magic growth. I was considering 100 just because, fuck it, it's one map. But for some reason I decided against that. I don't know why. Yeah, he incinerates the armor, so he deals huge damage to the Wyverns. Thunderstorm is like extremely breakable, and then once he loses it, he's kind of not amazing. Definitely carried by his weapon, but is that a bad thing? You decide. Just kidding. I'll decide. He's a S tier. I'll say he's S tier. So let's talk about Mori. This is my favorite character in the game. I love them. Mostly because of the story I told before about how it was a stretch goal to even implement their mechanic at all. Really happy that I did. But yeah, really fun character. High magic, and all of their attacks are multiplied by 50%, by 150%, by 1.5, increased by 50%. The thing is that Tenebrate is overkill and really inaccurate. Often overkill, I should say, not always. It actually exactly kills one of the Dark Mage reinforcements. I forget which one, if it's the paired up one or not. But yeah, it's Tenebrate with both attacks is an exact kill on somebody. But yeah, Mori really needs Blaze, the Blaze that's dropped by this dude here. Because he really needs his hit fixed. Blaze has 25 more hit than Tenebrate, I believe. 90 and 65. Yeah, that's 25. So he really needs the hit fix. So getting him Blaze basically fixes his main problem. He has good physical bulk, and his magical bulk is whatever, and his speed is terrible. But that doesn't matter because he's doubling everybody, or 1.5ing everybody. So they're really fun. Have I been saying he, or is it they? They're really fun. Super fun gimmick character. Not incredible, and matches up really poorly against the last two enemies because gets completely obliterated by Ziria, Sophronius' sword, and Yuaka that Beatrice has here gives, I think, 20 res, 10 or 20. 20. So they probably tink her. So cool gimmick enough that I don't want to put them down with Conley and Eric in them. I think I'll put Mori in A tier. Very fun unit. So we get to these last two, and I'm counting both of these as S asterisk. That meaning would be S tier, but availability is Shaisa. So Ethne is, funny singer with funny 100% growths and several stats. Guaranteed to cap luck in 2 levels. Problems with her are 5 move. Yeah, that can be fixed with pivot, but she also wants to be singing every turn to get EXP, because that's the only way she can gain EXP. And she has no combat at all, so she can't be used for backup attacks. And singing is really good, obviously, because why wouldn't it be? It always is good. But it's not that necessary in this. By the time you get her, I feel like there's not really much purpose for her. I guess if a big group of these reinforcements take you by surprise, then it helps to have her get you some more action economy out of your archers. Or if Conley does his thing and misses, she can get him stuff. And also if you wanted to focus EXP into somebody, she could do it. She could help out with that. And she has a neat little pivot sing maneuver. She could pivot and then sing. So that's neat, but not super useful. And she doesn't have anything as cool as Azura's shelter sing mechanic. Look that up if you haven't, if you're not familiar. But in Conquest, well, in Fates in general, Azura is able to sing multiple times per turn if you sacrifice other units' actions for her. And there's no such gimmick in this game. So, honestly, because of her, I feel like she would be S tier if you got her turn 1. But I feel like she's like A tier at best if you get her, because in reality, when you get her this late. I feel like she'd be useful if like the left side wasn't done yet. By the time you get her, I think the left side will always be done, or they'll finish at about the same time. And it's neat that it works out that way, because that was, that's the sort of thing I would hope for. But it means she's less useful. So one regret I have about this whole Game Jam project is that Ethne is not super available. Elaine, not the same feeling. She is available for exactly the right amount of time. What Elaine is a please don't softlock character. Please don't get hard-walled by the final boss, because he is extremely strong. His weapon is Brave. And when he's paired up, he gets to attack 3 times instead of 2. The third one's at half power, but whatever. Elaine is made to... She's a Goto, like very normal Goto. Like, look at these stats. Compared to Marina. And growths are good, but they're not like incredible. And sure, her def and res are extremely good, but I didn't even realize I gave her 0 weapon level, but she is already capped, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, Elaine beats Marina in every stat except for luck, which she loses by 5. But that doesn't matter much because a lot of enemies tink her or can't attack her at all because of her Gale Spear, which is super broken. Sophronius uses a sword once Glacies breaks after 3 uses. So, which he'll do in 2 turns. So the Gale Spear completely walls him, so it's a guaranteed win as soon as you have her, and you've cleared off all the other enemies. The last enemy in the game that she struggles with, the only enemy in the game really, is this guy because he has a Gale Axe to the left of Beatrice, to the west of her. So she can't attack him because he has a Gale weapon. But her stats are really good, and they're actually deceptively bad here, because the Guardian Spear and the Noble Badge combine to give her +2 in several stats, +5 in several stats. Noble Badge and the Guardian Spear. She gives you a second Guardian Spear. And she has the Tempest Spear just for fun. She's never going to use it. It's not good for her. It would be good on a different unit. Like if Nadia joined with it, it would be pretty amazing. Actually, I probably should have made Nadia join with that. That would have been sick. But yeah, the Tempest Spear is a fire sweep spear. If you're a Fire Emblem Heroes player, you can't counterattack or be counterattacked when you use the Tempest Spear, which she doesn't need because the Guardian Spear just kills things anyway, and enemies rarely are able to touch her. And the Gale Spear will just completely solve certain matchups. Like in front of Beatrice, there's a Myrmidon and a Spy that are made to perfectly target the space in front of her. But like she has a Gale Spear, they can't attack her. They're meant to hit her once with a defense-piercing épée attack, the sword épée, which pierces defense. And this guy has a spider blade because he's a spy. Obviously, what else would he have? So he debuffs her also, but except neither of them actually do because she has a Gale Spear. So she can take on both of them, and also Sophronius, the final boss. She's just meant to be an anti-softlock unit, and you only get her if you've saved all of the villagers, all 5 of them. So I think that's a sufficient reward. Like, you probably had to use some pivots cleverly to get people in position to save the villagers. So I feel like if you've earned her, then you win. You deserve it. Half get out of jail free, half great reward. And also I wanted the left side to be as worth doing as the right side, because the right side is mandatory. You have to get Ethne and her fortress key in order to get inside the fortress. So I was like, how do I do something of equal value on this side? And my first thought was just the Titan bow. But then I was like, no, that's not nearly good enough. In fact, in my recording that I had on earlier, I didn't even use it. I forgot about it. But getting a broken new character gets you double duty because you get more dialogue, and the story was part of the fun I was having with this. And you get someone who solves the end game for you. So if you do both sides, you win. She destroys the Wyverns. She destroys all of these guys. So yeah, S asterisk because her availability is bad, but I think she belongs in S proper just because she completely solves the rest of the game for you. As opposed to Ethne, who is S asterisk, but it's kind of like, you know, really ruined by the fact that you don't really get to use her in the parts where she'd be important. You get to use her lane for exactly the parts you need her. So I think she's an easy S tier. Even though she has the default growth. Yeah, so that's it. I just wanted to talk about this game. I really... Oh, I didn't talk about Withdraw with Jameson. Yeah, one other thing I wanted to talk about was Withdraw. I feel like it would be... I'm sure some players have thought, aw, man, I can't rescue the green units, because in like Awakening you can. But I didn't want the whole scenario on the left side is completely solved if you can just use Withdraw, because you just pull the green unit to their house, you get a lane within like 5 turns. Easy peasy. And I feel like that's, you know, I don't really mind games that let you break them. Actually, I kind of love them. But I feel like it's much more interesting if you have it for its current effect, which is it's infinite range rescue, which means when you send a big group over here, by the time you don't need them anymore, like you don't need everyone over here, you can use Withdraw to pull someone over here instantly. So like what I should have done in that recording on the turn where Nadia died, what I should have done is I should have had Jameson rescue somebody over who could kill him, who could finish off the duo, the remaining one of the duo, like Renea or somebody. Probably not Renea. She was probably needed over here. I bet there are Wyverns still alive. But I don't remember. I have to relook at the recording. There's a tile error. Ah, oh. Dang, this is the wrong tile. All right, let me fix that. And fixed. Okay, I never noticed that. Anyway. So yeah, the Withdraw stuff I thought is way more interesting if it only targets players in this particular map. I personally like how it behaves in Awakening also, but for this particular map, I think it made it a lot more interesting for it to only work on player units. So if you're playing and that crossed your mind, that was my rationale. You can withdraw a player unit to transport someone across the side. It's, you know, a free route switch, like being able to trade items from Celica to Alm. You can just immediately trade someone from Divinia to Mori or whatever. I'm losing the plot. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Yeah. Okay, I didn't give anyone descriptions except Divinia. I forget what I've talked about on this recording versus the last one, because the last one I recorded all of this and then tried listening to it back and there was no audio. Tragedy can come for us all. Yeah, so that's all. Thank you so much for listening to this whole video. This has probably been super long. So if you've been listening, and if you haven't, I hope you had a great nap, and or I hope, you know, you drove to your destination successfully. There are other kinds of videos I want to make. There's a scripted one I've had the script for ages, but I haven't ever gotten around to recording it. And that one should be much, much shorter. Hopefully like 10 minutes on that one. But anyway, I'm really happy if you were able to listen to all of this, and even if you weren't, it's fine. I love this game so much, and I love this genre so much. There are so many interesting ways it can be toyed with. I've gone on enough tangents. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope y'all have a great day. See y'all around.